Curious what isn't working in practice. What do we need to improve on for these tools to actually be as helpful as we want them to be? Maybe you could start off from the financial perspective where it's falling
Sure,
short.
yeah, and I'm also a tool builder, so I'm very conscious on what the user demand is. So it also differentiates on the use cases. If it's a client-facing, you don't have the internal employees doing the last human review, so they are not there to catch any errors. So if you develop those type of applications, the guardrails are very important. And then you also have the output hallucination. LM is famous for hallucination, so how do you automatically capture those to the point that you feel comfortable presenting this directly to clients? It's also about people's tolerance for latency. If you do Google search, you expect the answer to come back in sub 1 second. You can do a deep thinking model, but not everyone is going to wait online for 15 minutes for the results to come back, right? So you have to trade off. Do you call the deep thinking model when people only have patience for 10 seconds? You don't have the luxury to call the deep thinking mode. You have to really optimize your process. For the internal employee facing, it's about building tools to facilitate people's checking. You know that if you have a long LM output, you don't give the source citation, you don't point to the original document, it's very difficult for people to check. You can say, oh, this information extraction from private portfolio company, quarterly reporting or semi-annual reporting is 92%. I just can't tell you what 8% mistake is. Then it's taking human equal amount of time to go and match numbers one by one, right? So your extraction tool has to not only say what numbers it extracts, it has to say which line in the original document and build a convenient AI for people to validate so it truly gives you the benefit of automation. So there are all kinds of tools needed to make the human work well with machines and drive adoption.
So there's a lot of time spent by institutions, large corporations who want to use an agent, who want to use generative AI, but maybe the data is not clean enough, maybe it's not consolidated, maybe it's not indexed properly. And so there's quite a bit of preparation time before you can actually use generative AI and get a really powerful kind of output out of it. The other piece I think that's important is also the training, the upskilling, sort of how you go about adoption, because it's one thing to have a Copilot and use it in the Office suite. Even there, prompting is important. Learning how to prompt, how to write a prompt. It's different than writing a Google search, as most people probably know. But the better you get at prompting, the better you understand what kind of outputs you can get with different types of prompts. Sharing those kind of use cases among different colleagues in the company, having a champions network, having, training that just goes beyond sort of the 100 or 200 level. Those things are very important in terms of how you see the profitability, the value creation that you want to get out of GenAI.
Yeah, two areas I'd highlight. One, we're kind of struggling with job hugging a little bit. Bunch of researchers that are smart, that know what this technology is doing, and maybe not be incentivized to sort of run into using a large language model. And I think they point at some of the flaws. I think you were making, quick and dirty answers, or DeepSeek, I got to wait 15 minutes to get the answers. I don't know about everyone in the audience. I've never asked ChatGPT a question that didn't think it was a great idea or a great question. So there is some over-reliance on the information that you do get out of these tools. So be humble, understand what you have, and that's where governance and oversight comes in. One area I want to highlight too, we're talking about all the good, all the efficiencies, hopefully the revenue generating aspects we could implement this technology. We can't forget the bad guys have this. Deepfakes have happened in this industry already. Millions of dollars have been wired out of banks and funds because of deepfakes. So that is a real thing. As we're thinking about all the good, we also have to keep our eye towards the bad. And how do we protect our employees? How do we protect our clients' information? And this is where cybersecurity spend and tech spend need to increase year over year, because the bad guys are just getting better. Just like our large language model, when we first rolled it out at Mercer, it was okay. It was frustrating to use because you knew how good ChatGPT was. Fast forward today, it's humming along because it's had more data, more people are using it. It's getting exponentially better. So that's the other thing we can't forget about this technology. It's at a point in time right now where we're all illuminated by it, but it's going to continue to get better, better, and better, and I think more invisible to business processes. So that upskilling, the awareness beyond just mom and pop, but to that junior, that sophomore in college, we need to prepare them as they're more like a third-year associate versus coming in entry level, because quite frankly, those jobs are getting removed.
There's definitely limitations, right? That's why, like, I think everyone that really knows this technology well says at this point in time, a human has to be in the loop unless there's like certain use cases where it doesn't, or you're willing to accept a certain level of error that as a business process, you're just willing to accept. What you actually find though, is it's the marriage between LLMs and traditional machine learning and other algorithms, right? So what you can potentially have happen is that the LLM puts out, hey, I'm about to say this. You have a governance or fact checker that comes in over top and goes, listen, the average price for this is between 15,000 and 18,000. Right now you're saying $1. Please rerun your analysis. And then the bot goes and does it again. So like when you really get into multi-agentic flows, you actually do have one agent doing its steps, coming back out, goes to a manager agent. The manager agent says yes, no, or a fact checker says yes, no. Sometimes what you'll also do is you'll have one bot or one agent that's actually focused on the positive, the other one focused on the negative, and then you have a moderator in between, and then you have a fact checker to make sure that it's not hallucinating. All of those things are accessible and doable, and within kind of bandwidth timeframes that you're talking about, that gets you to a higher resolution, that gets you within, I'll say, business accuracy.
Yeah, I can add on that. So usually the large financial institutions have internal governance process for different new use cases, be it traditional financial model or machine learning model or now AI model, and they rate the risky level of the application by what it's trying to do, what is triggering, what are the consequences if something goes wrong. So the answering questions is generally not very high risk. At most, you have reputational risk if you give a wrong answer, but triggering an action like selling a car or doing a transaction on client behalf or doing some processes that you're the human oversee is a high risk application. So that bar has to be a lot higher.
That's why in finance, right, you see certain applications in financial industry and others where it's a little slower, right? Like, for example, fraud detection. Mm-hmm. Fraud detection is nice because you can just flag something and somebody looks into it. And there's not a lot of regulation as opposed to, aside from the fact that you have to do it, right? Loan underwriting is a whole nother ballgame. Loan underwriting, you have to analyze individuals and see whether you're going to make a loan to them. And there are all sorts of laws against biases. And once you start saying that there has to be a law that you can't be biased in various ways, then suddenly how do you validate that your machine learning model, it hasn't just picked up biases and is applying them? It's not so easy.
I think, what you're getting at is different use cases and where the technology is sort of a slam dunk. And I think what we've seen in our client base is that the call center, customer support use cases, it's generally worked well. Companies have gotten a lot of value out of it in terms of time savings. Microsoft itself has used this technology for our own support, and we've saved somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 million by using different types of agents and call routing and a combination of different types of GenAI put together. When you get into some of those other types of scenarios, like say underwriting or mortgage applications or investment banking workflows, right? There needs to be a lot more human judgment, a lot more committee review, a lot more traditional wisdom, right? If you're somebody who's worked on deals for a long time, you probably know whether the model is coming out right or whether your due diligence has something that you need to take a deeper look at. But we do think there are some very, proven use cases now in that customer support space that, most companies have gotten some value out of it. But I do think even if you push this to its limits, like we call it the frontier firm, and you have orchestrators and multiple agents, I think, you have to be careful when you put this in front of clients. We have not seen a lot of institutions put this technology directly in front of clients. Most of the use cases I've seen are internal facing for internal, bankers to use or for advisors to use or customer support to use, putting it out directly in front of the client for the reasons you mentioned. The risk of getting it wrong and the penalty, the fine you will pay for getting it wrong could be a whole lot higher than the amount of money you might save. And so I think that's where the caution has come in.